From my experiences in prison and on the streets and stuff like that, this is something that I wanted to do a video on. Which group is the most cutthroat group? We got the Bloods, Crips, Norteños, Sureños, and the Whites. I'm not doing this as biased. I'm not doing this for on who I think's weak or anything like that. I'm just saying put facts as I've seen them and do the video from there. This video isn't to glorify gangs or gang activity or that type of lifestyle. So on prison yards that I've been on and seen stuff go down, I would say that a lot of the time, if it's going to be a violent incident happening, it's either the whites being the skinheads, the Norteños, or the Sureños, because they're the ones that mostly carry weapons and hands policy, whereas the blacks is more fighting and haven't really seen them use weapons much. So I was on a yard and there was really no northerners on that yard. It was whites, blacks, Sureños, and it had some paisas on there. And the Sureños were pushing tough. If somebody came on, said they were a paisa, they would strip the dudes down right there, tattoo checking them, and to see if they were paisa or not. And if they had any northerner tattoos, they were getting on them. So they dominated that yard. They kept control of it. Now with the whites, theirs is more split into each county's got their own car. And then you got your frontline soldiers like the skinheads and NLR, stuff like that. And skinheads use weapons all the time. Whereas some of the whites are only hands-on, regardless of how much time they got left to do. And the Sureños, I've always seen their weapons too. So during my time in prison, I've seen a lot of different little incidents. And majority of the violent incidents were either the skinheads, Sureños, when it came to having incidents with other groups, not within themselves. So when I do this video as most cutthroat, I'm doing this video as who's the most cutthroat group on their own, and who's the fastest to remove their own. From being a skinhead, I always pushed that we needed the paperwork before we moved one of our own. That was a big thing we had to do. We weren't just taking somebody's word on it and removing somebody and taking that chance that it was a smut campaign. There had to be paperwork on it. And so I'm going to take them down a little bit on this most cutthroat, because we did always push for paperwork. Now you got the Bloods and the Crips. Them, I didn't see really any internal conflicts going on much. And like I said, they would have a white Blood or a white Crip show up onto the yard, and they would tell the dude, like, hey, you got to go or the whites would then get on you. When we would tell them that they had to deal with it, or we would then deal with all of them. So I think they're at the bottom of the list on the cutthroats. I did see a few Southerner or Sureño removals, but there's nothing like what I've seen with the Norteños. I'm gonna have to say that they're the most cutthroat out of all of them, whether it's on the streets or in prison, because I've seen a lot of times where they move on people without the paperwork, just because somebody's saying so. And when it comes to politics and stuff like that, there's always going to be a power struggle. There's going to always be that one person that wants to be in control. And sometimes those people will manipulate their position of authority to gain the control that they want. Now, is it always right? No. Does it help them get to where they want to go? Yeah, of course it does. But also, it puts a lot of people against that person and a lot of people waiting for that downfall. And I've seen a lot of times where the Northerners didn't need the paperwork to make their move. They would just do it, and then later find out that the dude was no good, or later find out the dude was good, and then all of a sudden the people that did the move on him, they're deemed no good. And a lot of times when those people are deemed no good, it's due to they were taking orders from somebody else, and it was probably mostly a smut campaign. I can't say completely because I wasn't a Northerner, but out of all the groups that I came across in prison, I'm definitely going to say that the Northerners are the most cutthroat out of all of them. And you would think with them having small numbers on yards and stuff like that, that their unity and loyalty would be really tight and strong. And it wasn't that way from what I had seen. They were more worried about plotting on each other than they were on what else was going on the yard. And I think if they would have been more focused on what was going on in the yards, their numbers would have been bigger. They would have had stronger manpower, and they wouldn't have all the people that are dropping out like they do. So, with that being said, that's my little decision on who's the most cutthroat group out of all of them that I've ran across in prison out on the streets.